Okay, from our studios this week in Los Angeles and Tampa, this is Green Tagged Theme Park in 30. I'm Philip from Gantum Lighting and Controls, and I'm joined by my delightful co-host, Scott Swenson of Scott Swenson Creative Development. On Green Tag Theme Park in 30, we look at the top news each week and discuss why it matters to industry professionals in the theme park and theme entertainment spaces. This week, we're going to touch on a little bit of updates from Six Flags, then we're going to get into the elephant in the room of the Middle East tourism impact, and then finish with some of the changes that Disney has made to its executive team. And we want to just note that this week's episode is brought to you by Spinach Espresso, who sent...
There it is, Spinach Espresso. It's not everyone's cup of tea. We've had several people who have reached out, not, I would love to say thousands upon thousands, but we've had a couple folks reach out and ask about Spinach Espresso and can you get Spinach Espresso swag and merchandise and now, yes, you can. I don't know why this has become such a thing, but I've just had a great time with it. Developed a logo, and so this episode is brought to you by Spinach Espresso. It's not everyone's cup of tea. But if you'd like a mug or a t-shirt, or I think there's baby onesies or something all kinds of stupidness with the Spinach Espresso logo on it. And the t-shirts actually have the Green Tag logo on the back too, which is kind of fun.
Yeah.
But if you want those, you can go to Zazzle.com, just search Spinach Espresso and it will come up. But
I didn't know this was a thing until they just appeared. And I was like, okay, Scott ran with it.
I think it's so stupid. It's fun. I don't know. But there again, had nobody mentioned it, had I been the only one laughing, then I would have said, "Oh, screw it, we'll let this go." But there's a couple of you out there. You know who you are, and I appreciate you commenting on Spinach Espresso because that was a random made up thing at the time, and we're gonna see if we can make it a thing.
Yep.
Or
yes.
not. I don't know. At least I have a mug and a t-shirt. So, but if you too would like a mug or a t-shirt, it's at Zazzle.com. Just search Spinach Espresso. And I will tell you, it is print on demand. So it is not the most cost-effective way to do things. But I promise you, it is set on the absolute minimum amount of profit. I think I make 2% off of each thing sold. So if you want to play along and have a good time, and if you do get something, please take a photo and post it in the comments for our YouTube too, just because we would love to see you and your Spinach Espresso gear. Because it's stupid and fun. All right, Now back to things that are serious.
Yes. Speaking of serious brand activations. Oh, that could be a good segue.
That was a good smooth transition there, Philip.
It's almost as smooth as the espresso in Spinach Espresso. Anyway, so...
But it's not everyone's cup of tea.
No, it's not everyone's cup of tea. Neither this show or our chuckleheadedness over here. So Travis Kelce has been officially named as a brand ambassador for Six Flags. If y'all remember, back in October, we talked about how Kelce had joined the investor group of Jana Partners when they bought a 9% stake in the company. So we'd already talked about that in the past. And remember that at that time, Six Flags teased that they were going to be doing something with Travis Kelce that was going to be like this. So they rolled out officially what it means. I'm just going to read exactly from the press release. It says, Kelce will partner with Six Flags to provide marketing support to the company's portfolio of parks, including supplying digital content across various social media platforms. Six Flags also has the right to utilize Kelce's name, image, and likeness across a variety of approved channels, including broadcast media, streaming platforms, and in-park marketing outlets. In a separate press release that Dorian Lake sent out, which was forwarded to me by the editor of Attractions Magazine, they said in that Kelce was going to be promoting Six Flags in his social media platforms as well. And so it sounds like it's both, where he'll be talking about going to Six Flags and having fun there on his social media platforms. And then the park will also be able to use his image, likeness, and content that he's developing in their stuff on social, but also in the park as well. So
I think this is really interesting because it's not it's finding a way to do marketing that's not traditional marketing, that is current marketing, and that benefits the person. There have been, for years, they have always tried to find spokespeople for parks or representatives or brand ambassadors for certain areas. Yas Island tried desperately to find a different brand ambassador. for different things. And to my knowledge, they've gone through, I think, 3 and nothing really stuck. So I think that this is just another example of how a person of notoriety can actually invest in a company and then contribute to the well-being of that investment by continuing to use their notoriety to keep the Six Flags name out there in social media, both provided by the company and on their own social media platforms. So
Yep.
this seems like the next step in the marketing evolution that's happening when it comes to theme parks, especially, but kind of in general. So I think this is wise, and we'll see how it works.
They did not disclose any financial information about the deal, but to Scott's point, you could see how essentially, since he is an investor, if he makes the company more valuable, then that's how he gets
Right.
compensated.
Right. I mean, he's got a 9% stake in the company, so
Yeah.
it's in his best interest to continue to promote it.
Yeah. So we'll continue to follow this. I think it'll be more interesting once we actually see what the campaigns look like. So I'll be curious to watch when it starts showing up in the parks and we start to see if it actually moves the needle or not. So, we'll watch for that. So, okay, let's move on now to the elephant in the room. So several people have asked about this in the last several episodes for us to talk about what's going on in the Middle East. And Scott and I have, in classic Scott and I fashion, been avoiding talking about it until at least a little bit more information is out there. And we have talked about it in our Patreon show where we've bounced ideas back and forth. And we've heard from a lot of listeners, like an enormous amount of listeners about this topic. So I think for me, I just want to keep it in our lanes because we're not geopolitical experts, but I was set to be in the Middle East. So was Scott. I was vending at IAPA in the Middle East, and IAPA has canceled its show in the Middle East. And they, as I predicted, offered 2 options. You could get a refund minus 20%, or you could put your money towards next year and hold your spot for next year. So Gantum, we're going to be holding our spot for next year because I think even if I took that 20% and invested it, we're like, you're not really going to make up for that loss. To me, it mostly was the travel and those type of expenses. But anyway, I am moving the money and moving towards that. And from a strategic standpoint at Gantum, what I'm looking at here, I think it's mostly a waiting game of sorts because it all depends on how long for me, right now, I think it all depends on how long the strait actually remains closed. That's to me the biggest thing. And that's because, right, an enormous amount of our oil comes through that. And so 20% of the world's oil goes through that strait, right? It does disproportionately impact Europe and Asia. 80% of China's oil comes from that 20% that comes through that strait, but also a significant portion of the UK and Italy and Japan. Those places are going to be more impacted by it. But on a writ large level, the amount of time that strait remains closed could increase oil prices. So the longer it's closed, the higher oil prices go. If oil prices go high, that doesn't just impact those people, it impacts us and tourism. And that's because higher oil prices are inflationary because everything requires transit, especially in America, like food, materials, everything has to move on trucks or move through the air or somehow get around. And so it's not just inflationary in terms of it costing more at the pump, but it's inflationary for all sorts of items. So that's what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about how long is the strait going to be closed? How many drones do they have? They just released a statement today. Actually, the new Supreme Leader released a statement today saying that their main mission is to keep that strait closed. So if it remains, the longer it remains closed, the more inflationary it is. If it's too inflationary, that could not only impact our economy, but impact everyone's economy. In a tourism sense, in my opinion, what that does is make places like Six Flags especially vulnerable because, as we have talked about writ large, the higher inflation is, that means less discretionary income for the value-minded consumer, which is who Six Flags is targeting. I think this will be less of an impact to Disney, and I think Universal will sit somewhere in the middle. I'm done. Scott.
Well, okay, now this is one of those few times that Philip and I don't necessarily see eye to eye on this particular point. I actually think that higher fuel prices, especially when it comes to gasoline, is actually going to benefit a Six Flags situation because they have a lot more local parks. People will not be doing the major destination travels if it holds true with previous situations where travel has either been impacted because of COVID or fear of retaliation or gas prices or whatever. So it's the local parks that actually have a little bit of a boost, and it's the destination parks that take a little bit of a hit because people don't travel for their once a year visit to Walt Disney World in Florida or Disneyland in California. They instead go to their local parks. So I believe that this just might be a benefit for Six Flags to get people to come to the local parks because people are, and more often because people are not willing to travel long distances because of the cost. Now, whether that is true or not, I don't know. Like Philip said, we are not experts in this, but this is something that I'm just looking back. In 5 years of doing this show, we have covered some pretty major catastrophes, some pretty major situations, whether it's been COVID or COVID was the biggest.
2022 with the oil 2022 spike in 2022, and then COVID.
Yeah. Basically, I think the most important thing for our listeners to remember is make sure that you're doing parallel planning so that no matter which situation does come to be, whether it is, perfect example, Philip and I both have very similar backgrounds. We have access to very similar resources, and we have drawn two slightly different conclusions. We don't know which is right. We don't know which one is going to be true. I think the same is going to be true in your industry as well. So make sure that you are planning a lot of what ifs and continue to plan in parallel, not with the idea of, well, I'm going to shift when I need to. Be able to shift smoothly, because the more smoothly you can shift between one parallel plan and the next, the less likely it is to impact your industry negatively, or impact your company negatively. So, with all sort of post-crisis leadership, the only kind of crisis leadership there really is really good planning, so that you have multiple options, and you are right now, not when it happens, but right now, exploring as many options as possible that will reduce the costs, your transportation costs for goods, and to increase your local awareness so that people won't have to travel as far. Keep all of those things in play so that you can just shift lanes as opposed to stop one project and start a whole new one. That's going to be my biggest piece of advice.
Yes, I agree with actually most of what Scott said. I just want to clarify, it's not simply gas prices. So actually having that strait closed, I think a lot. When I first started researching it, I thought it would just be like priced at the pump. But the more I researched from economists, the more I learned that it's not just that, because everything requires gas to move. So goods coming in and out.
Right. That's why I said transportation of goods.
But it's not. Yeah. So, but I think my point was, groceries will be more expensive as well as gas. So if a family that's already struggling with disposable income, they're going to be facing multiple. So though I didn't think about, to your point, that means though that I could definitely see the argument where if you're a local zoo and you have families that are on the, in the lower income set and their groceries are getting more expensive, I could see how you could offer them a deal and say, hey, we're right nearby. You could just, it's cheap and easy for you to get here. There's transit, whatever. You could encourage people to come in. I can see that argument. So I didn't think about that lens, Scott, but I completely
and the only reason I bring it up is during 9/11, Busch Gardens had a very strong. We were at a nice 50-50 balance between a very strong local and a very strong tourist base. So the local base helped us keep moving forward because we already had it. We didn't have to garner it. We didn't have to try to gather it last minute. And as you say, food's going up. Everything that you buy is going to go up because transportation is going to be, and so therefore household incomes are going to be stretched thinner and thinner and thinner. So those big trips, those big signature trips, in my imagination, may be reduced. Now, the human psyche is a very weird thing, and we can't always track it. It's also possible that they may not do anything locally and decide, I'll be damned if we're giving up on our Disney. So
that's right.
I don't know, but I think This is a perfect example, though, of what I'm trying to explain, and that is have plans that you can shift between smoothly and evenly that are already in place. So it's not, oh crap, we're not getting our tourism business, we have to shift to locals. Now is the time to figure out what do you do with locals. And I would even say start to enact it.
Yeah. So in a way, I think we're almost saying the same thing that we were saying previously to this, in that we had talked about in our trends episode previously, we had talked about how in the industry it seems like it's bifurcating, in that your people are looking at how can we make our offering seem more valuable. Even haunted houses, like making sure people can spend more time there, and if they're going to spend money, they get a whole evening out of entertainment out of it. And as Scott mentioned, all of the efforts from the zoos and the smaller attractions. But we've also seen this expansion in luxury offerings, and that's because the highest growing demographic in America is millionaires. So here's the thing, if the highest growing demographic in America is millionaires, they're not going to really be impacted by any of this. Like, most economists that I read predict that if the strait remains closed for longer, we could see 3 to 5% inflation. That's not going to impact a millionaire. They're still going to go to Disney, and they're still going to buy premium experiences. So I think basically what we've been saying is like you're parallel planning, and that you're looking at your value offerings, but you're also looking at luxury offerings if that's a thing that you offer. And
if you already have that in your wheelhouse, and if you don't, maybe it's something to explore right now. I think the other thing we have to look at in the Middle East is the Middle East was on the precipice of becoming a major explosive, and I'm sorry for using that word, but an explosive player in the attractions industry.
Not a good word choice.
Yeah, sorry. I realized as I was saying it that it was the wrong choice, but they had they had their goals, that they wanted to be the hub of entertainment, with things like Qiddiya City in Saudi Arabia, with things like Yas Island in UAE, even smaller projects in Qatar. There's a lot of things happening, a lot of moving and shaking going on in that region, because the government is looking to sort of expand its portfolio of revenue generating industries. And because they have, dry, warm weather year round and are a relatively easy flight from European nations and a lot of, everything in that hemisphere really, that they wanted to continue to expand and make people recognize that the Middle East is a decent place to come and play in theme parks, which is why, and yes, they all realize they have to overcome the stigma, which I won't even go into, but they realized they had to do that, and the way they were going to do that is by the est factor, biggest, fastest, longest, all of that, and they had the deep pockets to do it, and they had the government support to make it happen, which is why, going back to our Six Flags stories, why Six Flags was so eager to partner with them in Qiddiya City. So as far as where is that going to go right now, with my friends who are living there at the moment, Yas Island has not closed in Abu Dhabi. Those parks are still operational. The Qiddiya City is still opening. Aqua Arabia is still scheduled to open on time. So, and I have, one of my friends on my WhatsApp group in UAE said, yeah, it's business as usual today. We heard a couple of booms this morning. Now, of course, being an American, that makes me nervous anyway, but apparently there is a shelter in place recommendation, but I signed up because, again, I do business in multiple parts of the world. I am signed up for all of the State Department recommendations for travel to these places. And it's interesting because they are at level 3 right now, which is reconsider your travel. And that's all of the Middle East, with obviously with the exception of Israel and Iran, that is do not travel, simply. But what's very interesting to me is each one of these, and I get probably 2 to 3 a day, each one of these emails will say, our number one priority is to get all American citizens out of the country. So whether they are recommending that no matter what the level is, the focus of the State Department is to get American citizens out of these countries. The other thing that they started to remind people of is the local laws, because they are different. And in UAE, for example, one of the things that came up in this morning's email from the State Department basically said, just as a reminder, posting any sort of propaganda or any sort of video of attacks is illegal in the UAE. So just kind of reminding people, don't make it look worse than everybody already thinks it is, because again, they're trying to control the narrative a wee bit. So, and again, we want to say, oh, that's horrible, and we do it here too. So I just think it's important to recognize that, like we've said, with the Middle East and those attractions that are continuing to expand and explode there. Sorry, another bad choice of words. But the ones that are starting to expand at a very high rate and being built very quickly to compete with parks in other places in the world, I don't think that's going to stop. I think it may go on pause for a hot second or two, but it might also, and this is going to sound counterintuitive, but it might also give them a little bit of extra time to make certain that things are running properly before it opens up to a world market again.
That's right. Yeah. So we were asked quite a few times, what we thought about exactly what Scott just said. And I think that I agree with everything Scott said. I'm just going to add that I don't think anybody ultimately knows. Like we said, it's about parallel planning, and it's about recognizing that it's the likelihood of different scenarios is going to change depending on how long things take and what happens. But I think right now, I agree with Scott in that that's why, I can say what we're doing as a company. And what I'm doing is rolling over my money to 2027 because I believe in what Scott is saying, that area this might be a speed bump. Right now, things are right now. This might be a tourism speed bump, but I don't think it's going to derail the tourism plans for that area. So right now, our plan is to exhibit there next year for the IAAPA Middle East. That will be in April of 2027. And I can also say that what we're doing is I took a little bit of the funding that we had and I signed up for IAAPA Expo Europe this year because that kind of diversifies my region. And again, even though the UK could be negatively also impacted by the inflation due to the oil and how long that could take, whatever, et cetera. I still think that the Universal project there is proceeding for as much as we can tell. And also, that being said, all the designers that I know that are designing stuff for the Middle East are still designing. They might be designing from here, but they're still working on.
Most of the ones I know are still there. Most of the ones I know are still there, and they have chosen not to leave. So, what I think the thing that we have to recognize is when Saudi, especially, I'm going to use Saudi as a microcosm because I don't want to lump Saudi and UAE together because they have a very different approach to this. But with Saudi, this was a long-term plan. I mean, this was not a get rich quick, because they don't need to get rich. They're already rich.
Yep.
Okay. So the governments that are funding these projects, and yes, they are for the most part government owned, even though they are leasing the Six Flags name or leasing the other IP names that are going to be there. But it was a long-term plan. It was not gosh, we have to earn our profit back in the first year. They're trying to change not only the world's perception of what their country is known for, but also the perception of the type of people their country is attracting.
Yep.
And I think that's going to continue. And that is assuming that, we are looking at a war that will end within, and when I was about to say shortly, but I was going to say end within 3 years, which in the grand scheme of things is relatively shortly. And we've been doing this show longer than that, so
Well, yeah.
But I think that there's still going to be a viable market there, because again, this was not short term, and they have invested a great deal of time, money, and they have a lot more planned for the future. So we will see.
Yep. Okay. I suppose if you all have more questions about that, you can add comments on there, or if there's anything that you are seeing from people that are working in the areas or whatnot, you're welcome to add more into this. It's obviously a developing story, and everything that we have said is based off of when we're recording, and we are recording early. I'm going to put this disclaimer on here. We are recording on Thursday, the 12th. So if something has happened since then and you're listening to us and you're like, oh my God, then that's why, because we're talking to you from the past or the future. No, the past. I don't know where we are. What is time?
I don't know where we are.
Okay. Let's our last story, we're not going to get to finish the entire story, but we're going to start on this. The last thing is that Disney Experiences has announced leadership changes. So in brief, of course, we already discussed about how Josh D'Amaro is going to be Disney's new CEO beginning March 18th. We talked about that and about what that meant for Disney really more investing in the parks side versus the classic, I guess, films side, or how it used to work in the past. So kind of looking at acknowledging how valuable the parks have become. Basically, we talked about that. So now they've announced the rest of the transitions. So Thomas Maslom is going to succeed D'Amaro as chairman of Disney Experiences. The 3 other leadership changes is that Jill Astoriano will be the president of Disneyland Resort. Tassia, can't announce. I'm going to butcher this last name.
Good old Tassia. We'll just call her Tassia, our buddy.
Yeah, Tassia, our buddy, is going to be president of Disney Parks International.
Philippatos, I believe, is the pronunciation, but I'm not sure.
Philippatos, okay. And Lisa Balzicki is going to be the president of Disney Consumer Products. So I have notes to get into each person individually, but I think in interest of time and just to tie it to what we were just talking about, writ large, my opinion of all of this is that what it does is signal, highlights Disney's investment in the more signature premium experiences, and also the acknowledgement of the strong IP and the stuff that the parks have. And not just, of course, you have here Thomas's background. I mean, most of Thomas's background, like out of his 28 years, whatnot, maybe 4 were theme parks. Everything else was cruises, hotels, food and beverage, and luxury hospitality. So you kind of get that sense from his direct background. And then if you look at Jill, who I met on a plane randomly, in Asia, and who I watched her speak multiple times. She's incredible. She's absolutely incredible. She's brilliant. She's an incredible leader, incredible woman. She's so kind. She's so nice. And her big thing, of course, was overseeing the Asia region. And she was the one that oversaw the Duffy and Friends and that expansion. And that's the example that Scott brought up when we talked about the Disney, where the Duffy has now transitioned from a theme park and now going into the film and going into animation. So it's the complete inverse of what the old Flywheel used to be. And so she explained how they basically made new characters that target specifically the biggest demographic groups in the park. I mean, she has a great mind for merchandising and for all that. And now she's moving to Disneyland, which is kind of the seat of where they are doing a lot of the, $60 billion, US renovation, that kind of thing. So Scott, what's your take?
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think that from what I've seen here, the people that they're putting in place, other than I will say that I think Thomas Maslom only wanted to put people in whose names were harder to pronounce than his. So I think that was one of the biggest factors. But other than that, looking at their experiences, I think you're absolutely right. I think that the focus is going to be on the premium experience, at least short term. And my guess is there's somebody sitting in an office somewhere going, oh God, Galactic Star Cruiser should have waited another 5 years and we would have been huge. We would have been gigantic. But that said, you also see that diversification. IAPA has started to incorporate cruise lines. Disney, of course, with the Disney Adventure and the Singapore routes, that's continuing to expand the Disney chunk of that. And quite honestly, even Disney Abu Dhabi is part of that expansion, part of that. Let's get the brand out there to people with higher incomes. Now, the thing that I know you always get concerned about, and you've mentioned it multiple times in the course of this show, and that is, are we creating too high a level of exclusivity for these parks? And that is possible. But I think it's also necessary if we're going to get into a situation where, and once again, we are not experts, but if we're going to get into a situation where the economy is such that the average family or the mean income family is not able to travel, then the businesses have to find a way to make up that money somewhere. And the only people they can target are the people who have the higher income, who are not impacted as much by the shift in the price of gasoline at the pumps, the price of bread in the grocery stores,
Yep.
the price of eggs, whatever. So, I think Disney is ahead of the curve. And what I think they're doing is exactly what we've talked about. These things I'm pretty sure, have been, well, as with Disney, they've been in the pipeline before they ever announced them. So they've been in the pipeline. Now they're bringing them to the surface. And so they've been following that multi-path, we'll call it pre-crisis leadership, not even post-crisis leadership, pre-crisis leadership, from the get-go, and they brought in the people that can make that happen and make it work. So I think it sounds like they're making some good business decisions. I don't know whether they will be popular with the mass populace of Disney fans, but I think they will definitely keep the company afloat so that in the future, when things normalize, or if they normalize, at least the company will still be there. So the question is it better to make it only for the rich for a short period of time, or lose the company completely? And those are the challenges that I think we're gonna see here. I also see here that we are out of time.
Yep.
So once again, I just want to say thank you, everybody. The vast majority of this show came from your suggestions and your comments. And when Philip and I started the show over 5 years ago now, we wanted very badly to make it so that we would open up a forum so people within the industry could find a place that they could hear our takes and then continue to chat and discuss with each other. And we are seeing that happen so much on the YouTube channel. And I just wanted to say how much we appreciate it. And we hope that you all keep listening, keep paying attention, share us to friends, family, tolerable enemies, and we will continue to putting out this information. We will see you all next week here on Green Tagged Theme Park in 30.